Unit 4, Simple Past, pages 40 through 46. Grammar in the real world begins on page 40, and I'll read it so that you can hear the simple past endings at home. The story of Google. Who started Google? Sergey Brin and Larry Page started the company. Sergey came from Moscow, Russia. He moved to the United States as a young child and later studied mathematics and computer science. Larry was born in Michigan and became interested in computers as a child. How did they meet? They met in 1995 at Stanford University in California, where they were both computer science students. They did not get along at first, but they soon became friends. What happened next? They designed a new internet search engine. At first, they worked in their rooms in college. Then they rented a friend's garage because Sergey's roommate complained about the noise from his computers. 3 years later, they started Google. Was it an immediate success? The company was an immediate success. Before Google, there were other search engines, but Google soon became the most popular one. The company grew quickly. They did not stop at just one product. Very soon, there were other Google products, like Google Maps and Gmail. 10 years later, Google earned over $10 billion and had about 20,000 employees. So what did people do before Google? Before Google, people went to libraries. They got information from books. These days, they just Google for information. The grammar presentation begins with affirmative statements. Affirmative statements just says that the subject and then the verb plus the ending, okay? That's for regular verbs, so start becomes started. The company started in 1998. Or they employed 20,000 people. That's a verb plus ed is regular verbs. But there are also irregular verbs, like grow becomes grew, and become turns into became. And that's irregular verbs. For negative statements, you start with a subject, I, plus the past tense of do, which is did, plus not. So did not or didn't. The base form of the verb in this example is start. It does not have a past tense ending. Only did is the past tense verb in the sentence. Only one past tense verb. That's for the negative. Yep, that's the negative, is not. So the next table, 2.3, has yes, no questions and short answers. The first table shows the past tense of do, which is did, then the subject, then the base form of the verb. Okay? So did is the only one in past tense. The base form is in present tense. The short answers on the bottom is yes, I did, which is the past tense of do, or no, I didn't. Okay? The next part has information questions. The top chart is what you ask when you have the subject, but you want to know what they did, okay? For example, you begin with the WH word like what did I study, okay? That means you have the subject, which is I, but you want to know what I studied, okay? The bottom chart is for when you don't know the subject, but you want to know it, okay? So who started the company would mean that you want to know who did it. You just don't have the subject, okay? Who started the company? Oh, and that one's in simple past. This chart is for using simple past. Basically, letter A just means that it happened once for however long and now it is done. That's what all those X's and the bar graphs mean. Just means it happened once. It doesn't matter how long it lasted, but now it is done. It doesn't happen anymore. It's in the simple past. For B, B's words can indicate the simple past. You have last week, last month, last year, 10 years ago. in 1998, or yesterday. All of those words, when you read them, they mean the simple past. The simple past is probably going to come next. C just is telling you to remember to use the comma after the time expression, and we've done this already. But the first example, you notice in 1998, comma, they started Google. The second example is no comma because the time phrase comes last. D is another thing with adverbs of frequency, and we've done these already too, but just to review the example, you have the subject, they. Had is the verb, it's in simple past. The adverb of frequency then goes right in the middle, often, and then sometimes is another example. The final thing I want to tell you about tonight is pronunciation point. Now, you don't need to know how to pronounce the past tense endings if you're writing them, but if you're saying them out loud, you probably want to know if you're saying it correctly or not. So we'll do this really quickly. The first point right here is verbs ending in a t, which is that T is t, or d. They get an extra syllable like id or ed. For example, over in the next box, you have rent becomes rented. It adds a syllable, rented. Decide becomes decided, decided. The second point is verbs ending in a voiceless consonant. A voiceless consonant is just a consonant that we don't use our voice at the end of, we whisper it instead. So examples of those are f, like in laugh, k, as in look, p, as in stop, s, as in miss, sh, as in finish, and ch, as in watch. All of those get the t sound. So laugh becomes laughed, look becomes looked, stop becomes stopped, miss is missed, finish is finished, and watch is watched. Now notice we whisper all of those endings. We don't use our voice, we just whisper them. The third point is verbs ending in voiced consonants or vowels, and these are all of the rest of the consonants and all of the vowels, okay? So if you can hear it at the end, if we're not whispering it at the end, you change the ending to a d. And what that means, the examples that are given right there is live. You're using your voice in the v sound, live. It just becomes lived. Change becomes changed. Learn becomes learned. Play becomes played. Okay, and that is all I have for you for this section of the chapter.